this rainy day, we're gonna look at one of the nicest catalogs that I've gotten from a big company, Vacheron Constantin. And this catalog single-handedly changed my opinion on Vacheron Constantin from one of meh to wow. So let's start out with this. This is the 2019-2020 catalog, so a bit dated. Got it in their Vacheron Constantin boutique in New York City. Hardcover, nice pattern, nice gold title and logo and all that. Open it up. It's, by the way, also a nice form factor, not too narrow. Nice little booklet. Open it up, and we see the start. Do better if possible, and that is always possible. That's actually a good saying. Now, I will say a few things. Vacheron Constantin. I've always liked the Maltese cross, right? On the movements, in the designs, the logo, all that. I think Vacheron Constantin does that exceptionally well. We all know Vacheron Constantin as the third member of the big three of Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Vacheron Constantin, being sort of the, well, perhaps the cheapest and the least quality, at least. I think that's the general consensus. Though I'm here to say that, well, first of all, the concept of the big three is really not that amazing right now. You have Patek Philippe, which, well, it's on shaky ground, but they're really doing everything. I think they're too big to be a big three watchmaker right now, but they do make nice watches, have some problems, but anyway, Audemars Piguet is a one-trick pony with the what's it called? Oh, come on, the Royal Oak and the derivatives of the Royal Oak. So few watches there, including the Code 1159, by the way. That's, I'd say, part of the Royal Oak family. Vacheron Constantin is really quite different. Now, in my opinion, right now, Vacheron Constantin is the best of the big three. I'll say it. Best of the big three. Better than Patek Philippe. Actually, quite a bit better than Patek Philippe. Both in terms of value for lower end watches, quality of higher end watches, brand as a whole, what they're doing, design wise, mission wise, everything about Vacheron Constantin just, to me, is better than Patek Philippe or Audemars Piguet. Audemars Piguet has gone full-on modern, Patek Philippe is stuck between modern and traditional, and Vacheron Constantin has gone mainly the traditional route. Not 100%, but mainly, and I think it's paying off. And see, I think Vacheron Constantin shows what Patek Philippe and Audemars Piguet could do. Oh, that's some pretty nice engraving right here. As we go through this catalog, you can see that it starts out with one of my favorite series from Vacheron Constantin, that I guess Chinese calendar where they have an animal in the middle, but no, I don't know if that's that series, but they have a series where they have and by the way, this kind of design we'll see throughout the beginning of this booklet at least, and incredible complications, incredible amount of complications. I mean, when you see a watch this thick, it's either an old pocket watch turned into a wristwatch, or has a lot of complications, or has a lot of fluff. In this case, it's a lot of complications. We'll go through, and you can see that the movement is typical hot horology finishing and everything. It's not actually in the highest end pieces, in my opinion, all that spectacular. I mean, this isn't a Philippe Dufour, it isn't, but it's good quality. And I also, in design, by the way, it's not a Philippe Dufour. I have seen that design really recently. I've seen that design really has a big role to play in how you perceive a movement. And this, and Vacheron Constantin in general, tends to have more, well, not wacky movements, but sort of not German. Let me put it that way. That's, I think, also why Alain Gonzona is perceived as such high quality, not just the use of German silver in the movements, which is debatable in terms of whether it adds anything or takes away from the physical characteristics of the watch, but in general, people like the looks of it more. I've actually heard somewhere that it's softer, so it might be easier to get a better finish, but I'm not sure the validity of that. But as you can see, Vacheron Constantin, traditional hands, nothing crazy, nothing spectacularly crazy, but the watch as a whole is quite spectacular. And here's my favorite series, Maîtres d'Art, or however you pronounce that. And here we get, first things first, my favorite series. When I saw this, I was completely blown away. Who else has a series of watches completely dedicated to the early years of ballooning, when you had the incredibly ornate and decorated balloons, have them engraved into the watch, have the enamel and the, I guess in this case, it's Champlevet, I think, because it looks that way, that they engraved, taken away material and then filled it with enamel, so it's enamel, engraved, all kinds of different colors and all that, and just look at it. You know, this is art. Now, I've said in my Parmigiani review last week that art has been changed over recent years, that you don't really get the super duper ornate pieces anymore. But Vacheron Constantin is really trying hard. Just look at that. I mean, I think actually going on from that talk, or rant rather, about how art has changed and that right now we don't have the super duper art pieces like we do with all the super duper details. I think in watches, actually there's a possibility of this kind of artwork being viable, because a watch is a very small piece when done correctly. Of course, there are monstrosities out there, but we don't really like to talk about them here. This kind of art in a very small area means that you can have that super duper attention to detail, super duper long time spent on very minute details, without having to do, well, like the equivalent of 100 watches for one bracelet or one, I don't know, one sculpture or like a little figurine or stuff like that. You can have just the dial be complete art, 100%. This can't get any better. Well, it always can, but in this case, I don't know how. And you have something like this. And I think that is just, I mean, look at this. There's really not much you can say about this, except that this is just breathtaking. Because it is breathtaking. And I have to say, it really took my breath away, and this watch specifically changed what I thought about Vacheron. Let's move on and see what else is there. Oh, look, next page. And you have, this is the Chinese zodiac, the animals. You have a pig, rat, another rat. And you can see that this is quite well done. Hand engraved, grand few enameled, 18 karat gold dial, hand engraved, platinum applied animal. In this case, I guess a gold animal. As you can see, you have incredible hand engraving, incredible, I don't know how they applied that to the dial, the design around it, but I think that's really well done with having this kind of dial. And of course these watches are outside the range of any normal person's budget. Actually, probably all the watches in Vacheron Constantin are outside the range of a normal person's budget. But you have to think about it this way. These watches are outside your budget, but it is these companies that dictate what happens in the lower markets, where you can actually afford watches. These companies going all in on this kind of art of watches means that there will be, well, perhaps knockoff is the most, the word that comes to mind first, but perhaps more gentle word might be better. Homages to perhaps not even the design, but to the quality. And when you get a homage of this kind of quality, going for this quality, the homage is focusing on the quality and not really the actual design or anything, that's where you start getting some real nice quality in lower end watches. Please forgive the chainsaw in the background. As you can see, some incredible pieces. And that's where I think Vacheron Constantin excels at. Two things in the high end. Incredible art. I mean, actually, when you think about it, this is more modern. A modern design, a modern design of old art. And it really works. I have to say, this kind of glazed glass look of these watches really is something special for me. I have not seen that anywhere else, and I'm quite blown away having all these different shades and of enamel. I mean, really an enamel dial for me is quite amazing, but it's lacking, see, this kind of, I was lacking that change, that difference, the way you can look at it for hours and notice different things in different lighting. And well, an enamel dial technically has that, but there are limits, and well, this bypasses those limits. Not one of many, certainly not one of many. Too many people in this catalog. Patrimony. This is some kind of, I guess, a minute repeater, yes, ultra thin. This really signifies Vacheron Constantin's lower end models that I would recommend, which is funny considering this is a minute repeater. But I think it's in the Patrimony line, other watches look similar to this, very simple, quite thin batons and hands and all that. Movement wise, quite good, equal or perhaps even a bit better than the Parmigiani's equivalent, which I consider, as you probably know from last week, the gold standard for the price range from a bigger company. Patrimony, let's get to, that's nice, isn't it? But I never really like the large rotors on potterology pieces costing this much. Patrimony, nice, not spectacular. This, another photo of, is that the same movement? I don't know, but looks the same because of that big honking motor. Ah, yes, it's a traditional. That's what I'm thinking about, that really good quality for the price. We'll get to that in a moment if I can find it here, but Traditional, quite self-explanatory. Look at all those interior angles. Well, actually, no, don't look at them because they don't exist, because like most watchmakers, they have reduced the number of interior angles as much as possible. Who would have thought? Now this is the way you do the rotor. When you want a big rotor, have it move on the outside. That's quite cool. Skeleton, really there's one skeleton I like from the big three, and that is Patek Philippe's one. You know what I mean, the rose gold, beautiful thing, work of art. We move on, we see another nice skeleton, but not incredible. And we have this, I think might be it. Not 100% sure, but it's quite nice. See this design I really like. What is it, 41 millimeters? That's the only problem. Oh, here 38 millimeters. So I guess this one's the perfect one. I'll see if I can find a picture or something on the internet and a pricing for this for me to explain why I think it's so amazing. But 56, understatement is the ultimate refinement. See, you have a few different series of watches in Vacheron's lineup. All of them have their own design, and really I wouldn't say that Vacheron Constantin has one design to rule them all. Each one is pretty unique, and each one, quite interestingly, is quite a lot. It's very Vacheron. You can tell it's a Vacheron Constantin, while it being almost a generic, this is a watch design. It's unique in an understated way, and I quite like that. Quite. Overseas, this is their response to the Royal Oaks and Nautiluses of this world. Yeah, that's what I'll say. But this movement is quite nice. Yeah, but they screwed up the interior angles. See, let me explain. You see this curve right here? That should be a sharp angle. Sharp angle would make that really, really nice. Quite expensive to do, quite difficult. Not many watchmakers can do it. Vacheron does do it though, and that's where either this catalog is dated, or I think if it's not, and what I'm talking about is true, they have some interior angles on the lower end traditional, the cheapest traditional, or I don't know if it's the cheapest, but it's the one I'm going to recommend when I find a picture in a moment. But it does, well, you'll see what I mean. Overseas, we can skip through that. Everyone has talked about it. Everyone has said either it's amazing or it's bad. I personally don't really have an opinion on it. I saw it in real life and it's okay. It's not, well, the bracelet is quite amazing. The watch itself, it looks nicer in real life than in the photos, but yeah, it's there. Let me put it that way. It's in their lineup. Malta, this is nice, quite nice design. See what I mean? Completely different. Now you have this kind of Roman numeral. See, completely different design, and yet very Vacheron Constantin. Maybe it's the logo. I don't know. Historiques. That's quite nice. See, I love the way Vacheron Constantin puts their cross in the column wheel. I think that is a much better way of doing things than covering it up like some other watchmakers with some ugly little cap. Not gonna mention any names, but we all know it's Patek Philippe. Historiques. This catalog is too small for this camera. I have to hold it up. That's an interesting watch for driving when you have it like this. So, well, in this case, it's for left hand. So you have it like this, and See, this one is slanted, this one is straight up. Is it called the American? American 1921. Interesting. I got to try that on actually. It's quite a nice looking watch. And also quite plainly a pocket watch. Some other things, and we get to the end. Oh, come on, there's no end. Yes, also calibers and complications. Maybe here they'll have it. Let me see. Grand complications, of course we start with grand complications. Chronographs, special displays, ultra thin. That's not it, is it? Skeletons, of course they don't have it. So be back in a moment to get my iPad and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we have the traditional manual winding, 38 millimeters, 18 karat white gold, $21,600. We see the movement, if they let me see it, and you see here, right here, there's an interior angle. That is a sharp angle, beveled. Now, actually, now that I'm looking at it closely, it doesn't look that interior angled. But in videos I've seen it does, so yeah. Well, that's a pretty nice movement, you have to admit it. And for the price of this watch, I mean, it's basically Saxonia money from Lange. And I personally think if you're not 100% sure you need a hand-engraved balance cock, this is quite nice and, dare I say, better. Yeah, I would say this is better than a Saxonia without regarding the engraved balance cock. For me, the balance cock engraving is so important that I think that the Saxonia is better than this, but yeah, that's quite nice. Anyway, let's move that out of the way. Back to the catalog. Nice catalog. Really lots of positive things to say about Vacheron Constantin. I mean, it's not a bloke in a shed making watches by himself and outputting watches at a spectacular price of spectacular quality. But for a large manufacturer, for a member of the big three, yeah, that's quite nice. And then when you consider, well, something like the Panda, or better yet, this, yeah, I think Vacheron Constantin is quite a good watch company. Thanks for watching. Bye.